What's going on, guys? Welcome back. It is a hot zuba duper kind of day. So, hope you enjoyed your little day with Rex doing the heads. In the last video, they came out really nice. Heads are sorted. I ran around this morning trying to pick stuff up from Repco, the bearings and everything that I ordered. The bearings and rings never showed up because of the courier. That was some issue with the courier. Couriers, please. I don't rate them, but Cody's a legend and he's got them in now. So Dan's meant to be coming to pick up the VL this afternoon after I do some work to it today. So Dan's going to go pick up the rings and bearings for us and bring them out with him when he comes to pick up the VL so that we have them tonight, because it's getting, well, at the time you're watching this, it's after Christmas, but at the moment for us it's getting very close to Christmas and we really need to get this thing done and get it out of here because we have other stuff to do. I've got to go back to work on the 2nd, so it's getting a bit hectic as far as time goes. And obviously, without the bearings and rings, we can't gap rings, we can't do bearing clearances, which means we're sort of at a stalemate at this point with the engine. Still got a little bit we can do with the ute. We need to obviously degrease and clean up all this engine bay, get it all nice and clean for when the engine wants to go back in, because it'll be all nice and clean and new. The other thing is we will probably clean up the pipes and give them a paint too, so they're all nice and fresh and look really nice in there. So make sure it all looks really nice in there in the engine bay, all new. So got some work to do the VL today as well. VL needs a service because, well, it's due for it anyway. It hasn't actually been serviced since it got built, so it's due for an oil change. And when the Welch plug came out of the front of the head, it actually got fairly hot. So once it all gets to that sort of temperature, I like to change it out. I don't like to leave it in there after it's been that hot. So motor still seems healthy enough though. That should be sweet. Also got Dan's wheels back. He got some more machined off the inside lips so they won't hit the guards. So wheels can go back on. He wants me to check one of the axle seals is leaking, so I've got to check that. Got a new throttle cable. One of the issues with this car, along with the really hard to use clutch, because it's such a massive power rating for a single disc. It's a bit grabby and a bit hard to drive, but to compound that issue, the throttle cable's real notchy and grabby as well. It's not very nice. It's not nice and free like a throttle should be. So I got a new throttle cable for him as well. So hopefully that makes the car just a lot nicer to drive, especially, you know, around town low speed sort of thing. So a few things to do with the VL. Dan's coming to get it this afternoon. So yeah, that's pretty much going to be today. So sort out the VL. Hopefully this afternoon when Dan comes to get it, we'll have our rings and bearings, which means tomorrow we can get cracking back on this ute. So yeah, it's all happening around here. Flat out. Righto, so you can see in here,
the old throttle cable is very sad. It's not it's not a VL throttle cable. I don't know what it is. It's super long. It's all coiled up down underneath the manifold there. And where it actually goes through the firewall here is not correct either. So it's just a bit of a
dodgy throttle cable that needs to be swapped out. I've got a new VL turbo one here. So that'll go back in and hopefully just make this car just that little bit nicer to drive. The other thing I do have for Dan's VL here as well is a new tacho, because that tacho, obviously, as you remember if you have been keeping up with the VL, tacho didn't work, so Dan bought himself a new tacho, so I'll wire that one in as well. So I've got a little bit of work to do on the VL. The other thing, I don't know if Rex told you in the last video because I haven't edited it yet, but we did get another set of rod and pistons for a LS1 to replace the old bent rod in this motor. Funny story about these rods, they actually were ours at one point beforehand. So these came to us in a motor that I traded for my GQ Patrol many moons ago, and traded it for an LS1 which came in. It turned out it didn't actually have any main caps. Whoever pulled it down didn't keep the main caps, and we don't know whatever happened to the main caps. So it was a complete motor all pulled down with no main caps, so it was fairly useless. And I ended up selling it to Rex, and then Rex traded it to another bloke for a 25 head that didn't have any cam caps. So it was essentially trading a useless motor for a useless head. But so Rex sort of knew that these pistons and our rods were there, so he ended up chasing them up. So just so happens they seem to be the exact same pistons as the ones currently, so we just have to swap out the one and we're good to go. So that's awesome. So we've got a new rod for that. Rex reckons he was also looking at this rod as well, and not only is it bent that way, it's also bent that way too. So it's a very bent rod. We're pretty certain it must have been hydraulic at some point, not just detonation. We refuse to believe that an aspirated motor could detonate so bad to do that much damage. It is a known issue if injectors stick open, it can hydraulic with fuel, or it could have been full of water at some point, who knows. But for a rod to be that bent on 2 different planes, it's, yeah, something bad's happened in there. But anyway, that's all good, it'll be sorted out. So anyway, I'm going to swap out this throttle cable and hopefully it's just way nicer. Guys, I've just paused the time lapse because I've just gone to get the actual throttle cable off the throttle accelerator pedal end, and I've just got to show you this, probably to be believed. There's some super dodginess in this thing, so it looks to be as if someone has just taken the throttle cable out of the R33 or whatever this motor came out of, and as you can see there, they've just poked it through the hole in the top and then just hose clamped it onto the pedal, and that is just dodgy as heck. So, you know, very obviously this throttle cable is not the correct one for this vehicle. Probably has a lot to do with why it feels so terrible. So hopefully this new VL Turbo one will be a lot less dodgy, a lot more legit, and make this thing a lot nicer, because that is wild. So due to the fact that the VLT throttle cable, like this part here, is so much longer than the one that was in it, which I assume would be an RB25 or something or other like that, I pretty much have no choice but to mount it sort of up on top of the plenum like that, because if it goes underneath, it's not going to get wide open throttle, which is going to be a problem. So again, it's one of those things where Dan's coming to pick up the car this afternoon, so I don't have time to fix things properly. So that's another one of those things where it's going to be sorted out for now and fix it another day. So at the moment, I'm just going to make a new bracket to mount it up on top like so, so that it works. And I suppose eventually we'll have to try and get someone to shorten this throttle cable up.
Well,
so
there's not going to be anything wrong with it. It's just
it's going to look ugly.
It's just not going to be super pretty. Is the only problem.
It's going to be pretty gross. So I got this sheet of alley, which I'm going to make a throttle bracket out of. I've made up a net out of some cardboard, so it's just going to mount off the same bolts there. So I'll just mount it on top of that one, so that when it does come time and someone can shorten this cable up, we can just put it back into the other bracket and be done with it. But for now, it's going to have to mount up on top, so I can still get wide open throttle and work. So that's the net. Trace it onto the alley. Cut it out with the air hacksaw, bend it up, drill it in. Should be good to go. Such a pain. It's like so little jobs like this all just turn into pain in the ass. It's just a bloody pain in the ass. Righto, so while I work on this VL, Rex is going to get the engine bay of the ute sort of sorted, ready to be pushed outside and degreased and washed down. So it didn't come up too bad after a quick polish. Doesn't actually look as bad in there as I thought. So yeah, see how Dan likes it. Obviously the action of the RB25 throttle body is a lot shorter than the action of the VL one, so for that reason I've got to leave that little bit of slack in the cable, just because otherwise wide open throttle happens way before the pedal hits the floor, which is going to be a problem. So that's why it's got to be like that. It's just the way it is. I'll see how Dan likes it, and if he likes it, we'll leave it, and if not, we'll try and find another avenue on what we can do about it. So anyway, now it's pretty much time to service this thing, so I'll start it up, warm it up, get it warm, dump the oil, change the filter, and put fresh oil in. And then it's serviced, which is another thing off the list. And then I've got to start looking at probably freaking wiring, which is my least favorite thing to do. So you can sort of hear in videos this motor's a little bit rattly on startup when it's cold. The reason being for that is just forged motors generally, because of the, I suppose, in layman's terms, the easiest way to explain it is that because of the forged material that the pistons are made of, you need a bigger piston to wall clearance, because when they get hotter they expand further. So they expand and shrink a bit more than just cast does. So for that reason, until you get like a bit of combustion heat into the pistons and have them expand, they get a little bit of piston slap when they're cold. That's why it's a little bit knocky, or not knocky, but rattly on cold start. And then because it's only 85, inherently your combustion heat is cooler again, so it takes a bit longer for it to get heat into those pistons for them to expand properly and actually shut it up. But it does shut up after a few runs, a few pulls. This engine's dead quiet. That being said, I didn't build it, so I don't actually know what the piston to wall clearances were or anything like that, so I can't actually comment on what it was when whoever built the motor. But that is why forged motors, forged pistons, generally you get that little bit of a rickety piston slap on cold start. Yeah, also wouldn't recommend doing any of that fab work in thongs, but unfortunately my boots are soaking wet, because where I had to work this week, I had to like claw drill into the bottom of a glass tank, and you had no choice but to just stand under the water that was coming out of the drill bit and get soaking wet. So my boots are soaked, they're outside drying, so I had my thongs on, they're covered in alloy shavings and crap. Not very comfortable, but anyway, let this thing get up to temp and do the old school service on the ground, because obviously I can't use the hoist. Anyway, should be right. So this has all been cleaned up. Beautiful job, Rex, beautiful job. But we have been finding some grossness in this thing. Ew! Poor old neglected LS, eh?
That's what happens with not changing the oil often enough. It's fucking disgusting.
That is
I
pretty
found-
gross.
Found heaps of that shit too in the
Journals.
underneath the oil feeds. You can see the same sort of shit. So we did find a fair bit of random scoring and stuff like that in these bearings, and I dare say that's probably got a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Well, that's, you can, obviously you can't, but I can feel, you can feel it, like some of the gritty little pieces
Yeah.
in it. So yeah, that's sort of, that oil obviously hasn't been changed in quite some time at some point in this thing's life.
It's, who bloody knows?
Bent rod, shit oil.
Yeah. Crap everywhere. Anyway, that's one thing I love about motors, is you can just go through, rebuild them, make them good as new again. Fresh oil in the big girl. All that came out of it looks pretty decent, pretty clean. Nothing real gross in there. There's not a lot in there though. It's a little bit low for what I would like to see come out of it. So I don't know, it could be burning it. It could have just been where it was leaking from the tablet covers when they were lifting. So I'll just have to get down to keep an eye on that. Just keep a close eye on the oil. Make sure it's not going anywhere. But anyway, so that's done now. Rex has been busy just cleaning up all the main caps and pistons and that a bit more. Fully cleaning them up with brake cleaner and degreaser and stuff now. So
Yeah, I'm just gonna clean them all with just degreaser and blow them off for now. We got to do our dummy assemble and check everything, and when we disassemble it, then we'll do the final clean, brake cleaner, and the final clean off for final assembly. Because I'm going to use all the old bolts to do the clearance checks.
Clearance checking. Yep.
And then save the new bolts for final assembly so that they're all fresh fastened.
Sorry guys, that's the other thing I've neglected to mention thus far. We have opted to go all new GM hardware for this build. You can reuse the existing hardware. They are meant to be torque to yield, but you can reuse, and we have done so in the past with success. If it was something for like going in a drift car or something that was probably going to get flogged and pulled out again in a few years, we probably would have gone ahead and reused all these bolts. But because of the nature of what this engine's being built for, and this car being a workhorse and being a pretty long-term build, we've opted to go all brand new GM hardware, so everything's new. The reason we went GM is because they are torque to yield. They are designed to be a certain clamping force, and they have things like ARP and aftermarket fasteners and stuff. There are a lot of mixed opinions out there about them actually the clamping forces being too high and then pulling the big ends out around, and this causes premature wear on your bearings. It's not very nice. So that's why we've opted for the GM stuff. Because of the way this build is, we don't need to go to high-end fasteners. GM stuff's going to be fine, and we decided to go brand new just because it's going to be a bit of a workhorse and hopefully stay together for another couple of 100,000 Ks. So that's the reasoning behind going all new GM. Another thing that Dan wants on the VL is to pull out the e-boost so you can take that back to the bloke you bought it off. So probably pull that out now. That's not very exciting. Just chop, 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 get it out. Tidy up any loose ends. And then I'll have to have a look at this new tacho, see how it's wired in, because I've got to wire that in too and mount it. So. Righto guys, so I got the new tacho mounted in. I ended up just mounting it exactly where the old one was. I tried a few different places on the dash where I could get it. Because it's a lot shorter, I thought we might be able to set it back a bit further. But because of the way the mount that it came with is, it stands it off too much and it hits the door, so I couldn't fit it in. So I ended up just mounting it exactly the same way the old one was, but obviously the mount that it came with is still going to be here for if Dan wants to move it. So that's all wired in now and all good. I also fixed the wiring for the actual tacho signal that I did in Dan's shed the day before we went to Lakeside, if you remember that video. I never actually soldered any of those because Dan didn't have a soldering iron or a crimper or anything like that. So what I ended up doing there was just twist and taping them just to get him so he had a gauge for Lakeside. So actually I went back and soldered all that stuff up, so that's all good. So now it's just a matter of seeing if this tacho actually works. So let's give it a go. Doing. So I'm assuming it's a set the light.
What's that?
I'm assuming this is how you set the light.
Well, I would imagine so, yeah.
Who's got time to read instructions? Okay, let's see, change the color. The annoying thing is it's got a memory, like it does have positive battery memory for the color change, but because of the way there's something in this car that keeps draining the battery, I think it's just a bad earth on the alternator or something like that. So Dan is always disconnecting the battery, so he's gonna have to change that every time he turns the car on. But anyway, anywho.
Bring it up and hold it. Seems to be pretty close.
Yeah, seems pretty bang on. So anyway, it is a bit of a process, but I like the fact that every time this car sort of leaves here, it's a little bit cleaner, both under the bonnet and sort of inside the cab as well, like just a little bit nicer. Anyway, I'm still gonna put my 4-inch pike height intake on, but Dan didn't have his adapter with him when I picked up the stuff from his place today. He still got it in his car, which he didn't have on him today, so that's still got to go on when he comes to pick it up. I just spoke to Dan before. He potentially might not come out until tomorrow morning, just because where he is, he's pretty busy at the moment, which means VL will be here till the morning, and we won't actually get the bearings and rings for this LS until the morning. Which, you know, it's a bit of a pain, but there's not much we can do. Dan's an absolute legend for going to get him in the first place, and Cody is an absolute legend for sorting that out as well at Revco. So, yeah, sucks that the couriers messed up on their part, but it's no one else's fault. So it's awesome that Dan's sort of helping us out there, and Cody's done his best as he can to make it all good. Yeah, so Rex just got this block all ready. It's pretty much ready for a hone now. It's all clean, all scraped up. Ready for a hone. Obviously, we're not going to do that until we've got the rings ready to go. So, you know, it's all coming along. All the parts are all been cleaned up, ready to go pretty much for dummy assembly, and get all our bearing clearances and tolerances and ring gap and all that. So it sucks that I couldn't be here to do the heads and do a lot more of it, but I had other work to do. Obviously, my actual job had to go and do that. So you get that, but that's all right. It's all getting done. That's the main thing. Happy customers at the end of the day. That's the main thing. So anyway, the last thing I've really got to do this now is put Dan's wheels on and check. He's got a leak in axle seal that he wants me to have a look at. But as you can see, the car at the moment is in the afternoon sun. I did all the under the dash wiring, getting punished by the sun, and I'm not doing the diff in the sun. So I'm just going to leave it until it gets darker, and I'm going to sort it out then. The axles on these BorgWarner 78s are super easy to get out on the Skylines, but being that the diff on this car, which was originally a Ford diff, has internal drum handbrakes like a Ford, I'm not sure whether you can just take the axle with the whole handbrake setup or what the go is there. So I'll just have to have a look, but like I said, I'll do it in the shade. So anyway, while we wait for the sun to go down, we're going to go see our mate across the road about a few cars as well. And yeah, we'll come back a bit later, I suppose, and finish this stuff off. There's a few other little things we'll do on the ute tonight as well. Clean up the pipes, get them painted. A few other little things. Make sure I get the new rear main seal ready and the rear main plate. Just all these little things that we can do so that when it comes time to actually assemble the motor, it just all goes together. Dan called just before. He is going to come out this afternoon or / tonight at some point. So that means got to sort out this diff and stuff for him now. Make sure it's sorted out for when he gets here. So sun's nearly down. It'll be down by the time we sort of get right into it. Alrighty, so we got this pulled down to, we got the disc off and the caliper off and everything, and we found that that axle is just floating. It's definitely got a shut bearing on this side, and the way BorgWarner 78 bearings are, they're like a tapered roller. So chances are if the bearing's sort of rooted, if we pull it out now, it's going to collapse on us, and it's going to just open a can of worms, and Dan's on his way to pick up the car. So we are not going to be doing that now. It's also not a job that I'm going to do on the ground. I'll have to wait until the hoist is free, unless Dan wants to take it to... He's been talking about taking it to a mate of his that does diffs that and getting a Harrop True Track put in it, because it's still, this LSD needs to be shimmed. It's not quite right, so I'll probably just tell him to take it to his mate, get it True Tracked, and get him to do that frickin' bearings, well, put new bearings in it while he's at it. That'll be the way to go. But anyway, just gonna put it back together now, just because, yeah, that's not happening at the moment on the ground. But it's obviously leaking diff oil from that side because it's got a wrecked bearing, and so while it's in the air, I'll just check the diff fluid, top it up, make sure it's got plenty of diff oil in it. But yeah, wouldn't want to be driving it too hard the way it is, because he'll end up wrecking his centre and his axles. Righto, she's back on the ground. Dan's actually not coming out tonight at the moment. That is the consensus, because his, yeah, I don't know, the parts aren't in his possession at the moment, so there's no point in him coming out because he can't bring the parts out. And so Dan's plan at the moment, I told him I don't want to, because they're a tapered roller bearing, what's going to happen is if we pull that axle out, it's going to collapse. So I don't want to immobilize where it is, and obviously the hoist is occupied. So I told Dan, like, I don't want to pull it out here, because I've never actually done a wheel bearing on a BorgWarner 78, I've never had to. I'm hoping that it's just literally as simple as just a tapered roller with two shells that just sits in there, and then you squashed it in with the plate. And I'm hoping that's just how it works, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's a press on or what the go is, so I don't want to go attempting it, having it collapse, not being able to put it back together and having it mobilised over Christmas in this spot, because that's going to be a real pain in the ass for us. I don't particularly have the time to do it because we've got too much other stuff going on with this ute that is meant to be done before Christmas. like my sister's up from Sydney and stuff. Like I want to go spend some time with my family over Christmas that I haven't seen for a while. So I sort of really would like to get this done and not have this being a problem. So I told Dan, take it home. If he can just pull out the axle in his shed, and then, you know, sort of bring it back here, just the axle, and I'll see what I can do as far as the bearing goes, and just go from there. But at least that way, if it is more complicated than I think, the car's not immobilized in our way. And obviously it's going to be cheaper for Dan if he does it that way as well, because they don't have to pay me for the time. So that's the plan at the moment, is Dan's going to come and get it in the morning, if not tonight. He's going to let me know later on, but I don't think he's going to be coming tonight. So he'll come take it in the morning, and then he'll try and pull that axle out, try and source a bearing, and then just bring it back, and we'll see what we can do if we need to. It could be just as simple as just pulling the bearing off, putting the new one on. He might be able to do it all in his shed. So fingers crossed for him, that's how it goes, but we'll have to wait and see. So at the moment, I think, yeah, I don't know if I'll do them pipes or not tonight. Obviously it's not really worth painting at night time or out here at the moment. I don't know, I'll see, but just in case, I'll sign off the video now, just in case I don't get to that. If I get to that, well then I'll end this clip here. Alright, we are continuing. Not going to bed, not finishing up, so ignore. Well, I'm just gonna edit it out, so don't worry about it. But anyway. Oh, I did sign off the video, because I didn't know if we were gonna come back up or not. But yeah. No, we're back, we're gonna keep doing some stuff, so I'm gonna let down this car and get the pipes out and start on them, clean them up with a wire brush, and then give them a bit of a paint up, nice and pretty. What?
I was like, dude, the fucking whole motor's out. Well, you need the pipes, but yeah, they're in the tray. That makes way more sense now. Right. Sorry, as you were.
Yeah, Lord. So Rex is going to make a thread chaser for the head bolt holes in the LS, just because it's a common issue that the head bolt thread holes get all crap in the bottom of them, which makes them not very nice to put new bolts into. The other problem is, because GM were genius and changed everything to metric when they built the LS, but they made the head bolt studs M11 by 2, which is just a absurd thread to build.
It just doesn't exist.
It pretty much only exists in GM head bolts. That's pretty much it. It just doesn't exist anywhere else. So ARP actually do specifically make a tool for doing this, but it's like, yeah, pretty much. How do I explain this without giving anything away? Rex and I have a business opportunity upcoming, in which we don't want to spend a lot of money on specialized tools, because pretty soon we will be acquiring a whole mess of them. So even though we don't have this tool at the moment, we're going to do the old trick, like I've shown you a few videos before, of how to make a thread chaser out of a bolt. So we're going to use an old head bolt, because this is getting all new ARP head bolts. So we're going to use an old head bolt to make a thread chaser, so that we can actually clean out these threads without spending the money on an ARP tool that we're probably going to acquire in the next couple of months anyway. So.
I'm chasing him. You can't catch him.
Show the fans what you've made there, mate.
I've made a waste of fucking times what I've done.
Rex reckons he's wasted his time because nothing's coming out of these.
They're getting fuck all out of them.
That's right. It just means he did well cleaning them.
It does actually. Kudos to me for doing a really good job earlier.
It's the same way I've showed you how to make these before.
Yeah, just
See that?
a couple of slots
Couple
in
of
it,
slots in it.
and just angled it a little bit to keep the sharp edge on the like the clockwise side.
Do a bit of a clean.
Alright, I've got these pipes sort of clean up the wire brush, so I'll just give them a wash down, let them dry off, and then I'll just give them a hit with brake clean and give them a bit of a paint up, make them all nice and pretty. I've fully cleaned out the intake manifold, so that's out here drying out as well. And done the pipes. I'm just letting them dry out on the sawhorses here before I give them a flick of paint. So they should be looking pretty good. I just gave them, they're not too bad, these pipes, not as bad as most we've seen, so I just gave them a bit of a clean up with the wire brush. Then a nice flick of paint, they should look good. So the other advantage of doing all this now is it means that tomorrow when we have the bearings and we're doing some assembly of the engine, we don't have to make any mess. So obviously massively important when assembling engines, is to keep everything clean. So if all this is already done today, well then tomorrow when it comes time to do some assembly work, to do bearings and that sort of thing, we don't have to actually make any mess. So another thing that Rex is doing over here at the moment is because of the timing kit, we have to modify the cam retainer plate because there's a issue with clearance. So
Yeah, because this is a Torrington bearing timing set. The standard one's just a solid face. It just runs on the cam plate. So the Torrington one though, in the centre of the Torrington bearing, it obviously holds the inner race. It fouls on the cam plate, the retainer plate. So as these destructions here say,
so you just put a little chamfer on the front plate there so that it catches the bearing and not the actual gear.
so 1.5 to 2 mil chamfer just on on that thrust side of the
so
plate there.
It runs
So
on the
just-
bearing instead of the actual.
Yep, and just clears that bit.
Oh, cool. Righto, so these pipes, I'm going to be giving them a hit of cast iron, high ceramic, or high heat ceramic Dubicolour cast iron. I've done a few of them in cast iron. We did get one batch of the cast iron, which was definitely a bit of a mix-up, I think, on Dubicolour's part. It was cast iron, but it definitely came out cast alley, and when it got hot, turned pink. So hopefully this is actually cast iron, this one. But we'll find out. Even then, like the slight pinkish pipes didn't look too bad. It was just a bit of a weird thing to happen. But I meant to mention the clutch I ordered. So did end up ordering a clutch for this thing because it needed one. Where'd you put the clutch, Rex? Oh, so the clutch arrived today, which is awesome because it's early. So that's really good. So once it's down under there, but anyway, so that's just a full Exceedy clutch kit. Actually comes with a new throwout. It actually comes with a new slave as well, which obviously the LSs are like a center slave. I can show you here. Concentric slave. So the actual slave is part of the bearing carrier, and it actually pushes out from the center. So it comes with new slave, new throwout bearing, new flywheel, new heavy-duty Exceedy clutch, and the new pilot bearing or spigot bearing, whatever you want to call it. All for like $840. So can't really go wrong, especially for what this car's going to be used for. I think that should be fine. It'll be it's heavy duty enough that when it's loaded up, it should be fine. But it's not so heavy duty that driving it around in the city will be a pain in the ass. So it should be a pretty good thing. So that's here. That's good because that means once this engine's together tomorrow, once we get the rest of the parts we need, it can go in the car as soon as we have it together. Which means we shouldn't be held up by anything this weekend. Which means the whole project should just flow pretty well. Righto, so the cam retainer plate's pretty much ready to go, so it's been put back away. Pipes have got some paint on them, they're looking pretty good. Not bad at all. So we just started to look at prepping the front and rear plates. We don't have a front main seal though yet, it should be here tomorrow. And we sort of need to scrape off the mating surface for the gaskets. Also drilled off the sump gasket because it was pretty much toasted, it's over there, yeeted it out the door. So drilled that off so that we can scrape the sump surface and point that in the right direction, I suppose would be a good start. So that we can scrape that off and actually give that another clean as well. So the sump gasket actually gets riveted to the sump, and it's rubber like a lot of things on these GM LSs. They're rubber, they're actually reusable. Except that one, it was starting to separate from the rubber. So yeah, just looking at, Rex is looking at this rear main seal. Looks like a different seal, but it does look like it's all the same size. So just a totally different seal design. The way it's made is totally different. So hopefully it works alright. And yeah, clean these up, get these ready. Just a matter of getting all these little things ready so that you can have a nice, smooth day of assembly. Yeah, Rex is just trying to remove the actual plate from the bottom of the sump, so we can give it a proper clean out. For whenever they left all that oil in this motor for too long and it got all gross, there is just so much grossness in the bottom of that sump. Also, when we drilled out the rivets, there's potential that swarf got into the sump, so it's a good idea to actually get that that windage plate out and give it a good clean out. Big success. We have the correct gaskets to do it all. That's always good. Righto, we have been doing the big clean. Crappy work, but it's nice knowing that tomorrow we're not going to have to clean much stuff. That is, you know, the cream of it all is tomorrow we can just be assembling. So Rex is just scrubbing the crap out of this sump with E85. Much nicer in that sump, needed to be done. But anyway, that's pretty much all we're going to probably be doing tonight because it's 10:30 now, so it's getting kind of late and we're going to have a big day tomorrow. So I'll sign off this video again now for the second time. So yeah, cheers for watching everyone, as always. Big thank you. Yeah, massively appreciate everyone who watches the channel. So tomorrow's going to be a pretty big day of actual assembling and doing all that, so that'll be on the next video. So definitely tune in for that, especially all of you who like to sort of learn a bit more about engine assembly. We'll try and take you through as much as we can. That hopefully there might be something in there that you haven't already learnt, and if you're new here you might learn some things. So you know, gapping rings, doing bearing clearances, all that sort of crap. So yeah, you know, I forgot to mention, I don't know what Rex mentioned yesterday because I haven't edited that video yet, so sorry if there's some crossover of information, but Rex actually linished up the crank with some 1200 paper. All those little sort of odd marks that we were talking about when we pulled it down, you pretty much got most of them out to the point where you can't, they don't cut your nail, you can't really feel them, so that crank's going to be all good now, so that's awesome. So yeah, tomorrow's going to be final block prep, honing, ring gaps, doing bearings, so it's probably going to be a pretty long video, so tune in for that if you're interested, and we'll be getting that done. Still got a fair bit of work to do before Christmas. Yeah, the pressure's on, but anyway, we'll get there. So yeah, tune in for that. Thanks for watching, guys. Hit like, subscribe, comment. Yeah, leave us an opinion, whatever you think, and we'll see you on the next one. For us it'll be tomorrow, for you it'll probably be 2 days or so. So cheers guys, see you then.